Trucker Dump for January 16th, 2017, episode 119, Winter Driving Tips from an Alaskan Trucker.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey y'all, welcome to a new year. Todd McCann here. Hope y'all are sticking to your resolutions so far. You know, I don't really have resolutions, so to speak, but I have kind of made a promise to myself. Well, maybe that is a resolution. I don't know. But anyway, I've kind of made a commitment to try to work out a little bit more. It's going pretty good so far. I'll save that for a later podcast because I still need to do that exercise podcast, and I'll get to that probably, I don't know, maybe next month. We'll see. Right now, well, I just barely avoided a catastrophe. I've been sitting here for 32 hours, and I just almost went on duty. That would have been pretty darn stupid. So I found out I could deliver my load a little bit. I could still deliver my load on time and pick up just a little late. So I'm going to get my 34-hour break in, which means there's plenty of hours to run this last week before I get home, which is cool. Speaking of home, hope y'all got home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think the last time I recorded was just either right before or right after Thanksgiving, so I wasn't really sure how that was going with y'all. I end up not making it home for my wife's Thanksgiving, which turned out not to be such a bad thing because, it always sucks not hanging out with family, but we decided not to cook or anything this year, so everybody just decided to go to Golden Corral, and it was a freaking nightmare, I guess. I got a call from the evil overlord in line. She was not very happy with the world and not very thankful for anything. But anyway, they supposedly had a good time, and my sister-in-law swears she saw a couple of the guys actually, from Duck Dynasty at our local Joplin Golden Corral. So if any of you Duck Dynasty guys are out there listening to my podcast, let me know. Kind of doubt it was them, but she swears it was, and she watches the show. So who knows with those Duck Dynasty guys? They are kind of down home. I could easily see them being in Joplin, Missouri, eating at a Golden Corral on Thanksgiving Day. But anyway, I did make it home for both my Christmas things that just kind of miraculously happened. I got a surprise load home. I thought I was going to get home late, and I made it home on time, so that was cool. We went and hung out at my sister's house on Christmas Eve. Mom got a little creative and she came into a little bit of cash and decided to give us some of it. Of course, she didn't just put it in an envelope. That would be too easy. She put it in a whole bunch of envelopes, hid it all over the house. Nothing quite like a bunch of 40-year-old people diving around the house looking under tables for money. Who says Christmas isn't commercialized? Anyway, that was kind of fun. And, of course, got nice and stocked up with Mom's caramel corn and chocolate chip cookies, which she's famous for. So, of course, I had I was eating like 6 of them a night out here on the road till we got rid of them because, you try to eat healthy, but you can't pass up the cookies, so you have to eat them. Yeah, I usually binge all the way through January, but hey, I was working out at the same time, so it's all good. Anyway, the next day on Christmas Day, we got to go over to the evil overlord's sister's house and hang out with them, watch some football. I took my AeroPress coffee maker, and everybody was super happy with the coffee because it's an awesome maker. If you don't know what that is, check out the last podcast. Let's see, what did I get over there? Oh yeah, I got it. I got a waffle maker. What a great gift, because, hey, waffles, come on, Waffles and pancakes are some of my favorite foods. Of course, maybe that's because I love maple syrup, and it's like pancakes and waffles are basically a conduit to get a lot of maple syrup into your system. So, anyway, that was a great gift. Haven't had a chance to use it yet, but I made sure I told the evil overlord she better darn well have some waffle mix for me at the house when I get home next time. And this gift also is somewhat of an inside joke because it's kind of a common practice for me. And when I'm at home and the evil overlord and I are laying in bed in the morning, we're playing on our phones or whatever, and we're just kind of talking. And at some point, without even looking over at her, I'll say, "Why don't you go make me some waffles, bitch?" And it's just, it comes from a scene from a movie called Road Trip, where this dog tells this old man, they're all stoned, but tells this old man to go tell that bitch to go make him some blueberry pancakes. So it's just kind of a play on that. And I think the evil overlord probably told her sister that, and that's why I ended up with a waffle maker. Anyway, love it no matter how I got it. So, hey, if my house burns down, if I have to tell you that my house burned down on the next podcast, you'll know why. Because me in the kitchen is not a very safe thing. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, my best gift was actually the day before when I got home. I had been telling the evil overlord, we've been having a lot of problems with our phones. We both had iPhone 6s. We both use them a lot. So batteries were really bad. We had an issue that Apple's not acknowledging yet, but it does exist because one of the Apple Care people that I talked to says it's been happening a lot, but they've admitted it on the 6S, but not the original 6. Anyway, battery issues where it's like dying at 35%, and it just sucks, and it's getting a little frustrating, a little buggy and everything. So I've been telling the evil overlord, every time I see a special for Verizon phones comes up, I say go in and check them out, see if we can get new phones for about the same price per month. And she's been resisting that because she knew our payment was going to go up a little bit. Always does with a new phone. Don't know how that works, but anyway, she just texted me out of the blue and said she was sick of it. And this was when I was still out on the road and I was on my way home. And she said, well, I'm just sick of it. I'm going into Verizon to see what they got. And next thing you know, I get a text that says, don't contact me for a little bit. I'm swapping everything over. So apparently she got an iPhone. And we had talked about this already. So I was like, well, cool. She got an iPhone. At least I'll be able to play with it a little bit when I'm home. She got a brand new 7. And, I knew I was not eligible until January. We had already been in the month before and figured that out. So I wasn't expecting one. Of course, she's evil. So this is the way she rolls. As soon as she picked me up, we got in the car and I loaded everything up, and she handed me the phone and she was asking me, I was looking at it and going, whoa, well, this is awesome, and she goes, yeah, you're going to have to tell me how to do something. And then you're going to have to set up yours. And she yanked mine from, she had it over on her left side. She held it up in front of my face, and I guess I made a pretty funny face. I wish she would have videoed it, but she said I was certainly surprised, and I was not expecting one, but apparently Verizon let me get my iPhone 7 a little early. It does suck not having a headphone jack on that thing, but I'm getting used to it. Whatever. It's still a darn nice phone. So that was my best gift of the, well, I'm not going to say that. That wasn't my best gift. My best gift was that my oldest nephew, Jacob, he's the one who says, Todd doesn't know what he's doing at the end of the podcast every time. Of course, now he doesn't have that nice little voice. He is 17 and his voice is deeper than mine. But anyway, he has been making some not so great choices with friends and his life, school and stuff like that, and he made a decision to get out of that situation. So in order to do that and get away from friends and stuff like that, he needed to get out of town. So he is now living with us. So that is actually my best gift, that he made some good decisions, and I hope he sticks with it. Of course, we've laid down some pretty strict rules on him to live in our house and pay for him because he eats like a freaking horse. As every teenage boy does. But anyway, we were really happy that he made that decision. It's taken some use to, I don't have to deal with it. I'm not there a lot, but, the evil of Lord is there with him every day. So if you're the praying type, please pray for her. Because it's totally different. We decided not to have kids for a reason, and now we've got a 17-year-old living in the house. So anyway, we're happy to have him there, and that was actually my best Christmas gift. Hey, you know how I said I nearly screwed up in the very beginning by, screwing up a 34-hour break? Well, I actually did screw up this week. Wasn't horrible, but it's never great when you do this. But this is your little trucking tidbit, something to learn here, hopefully. I had one of those situations where you forget to unhook the airlines and you pull away from the truck or pull away from the trailer. Man, I felt a little tension. I looked back and my red line was the only one still connected, and it had stretched to, I don't know, 25, 30 feet, something like that. It actually thinned the hose out. That sucked. Thankfully, the hoses still worked, so I just bungee corded them up and, got to the yard a few days later. I had to go in anyway to get some other stuff fixed, and that's described in the interview a little bit. But actually, that really sucked. And, when that tends to happen to me, like when, I've dropped landing gear before, like almost all the way to ground, and the frame rails on the trailers have just caught it just in time, and, just some screw ups like that. And every single time things like that happen, it's because I get out of a routine. I think we as truckers, we all have these routines, like we go back and we unhook the airlines and do the landing gear and unhook the fifth wheel all in a particular way. And if that gets screwed up, we have a tendency to screw up. And I've talked to other truck drivers who say the exact same thing. Well, in this situation, it was nasty night and there was about 2 inches of mud in the parking lot, and I was trying to tiptoe around so I didn't get, completely filthy and messy, and I was trying to keep my clothes from getting all nasty all over this thing. Yes, I know that sounds really girly, but I got to sit in that truck and didn't want to track all that mud in there and everything. And I just got out of a routine. Plus, I had to slide my tandems before I could drop my trailer and everything, and I was just all out of sorts. So here's the tip to avoid this. Trucker Bob, who is over in the our iTrucker Slack group, I mentioned him before, he suggested an acronym to remember how to do this, that you won't ever have to worry about this again. And that is ALF. You remember the characters from the 80s. Of course, he's pretty annoying, but this is a good acronym. ALF, A-L-F. So airlines, landing gear, fifth wheel. Always in that order. Now, I've never done it that way. I've always, gone order from the truck. So I'll get out, first thing in line is the airlines, and I'll unhook the fifth wheel, and then I'll go back and I'll do the landing gear. That is the wrong way to do it. I've been doing it for 19 years the wrong way. So here's the lesson for today. Learn from Trucker Bob. Do the airlines first, then go back and do the landing gear. That way, if you forget to pull the fifth wheel, it's no big deal, because you're going to try to pull away, you're going to realize something's wrong, and that's going to make you go back and recheck everything. But you're not going to drop the trailer to the ground, you're not going to rip your airlines out. That's never going to happen if you do your fifth wheel last. So there is your little trucking tip of the day. Although, I shouldn't say it's the only tip of the day, because basically this whole podcast is about winter driving tips. Anyway. Okay, let's see. We're not going to have any feedback later on in the show, because this interview, I listen to a lot of tech podcasts, and a lot of them go, an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Some of them even go longer than that. And I know you truckers, or probably anybody listening to this, probably isn't going to mind a longer podcast. I've actually been told by people that they wish they were a little bit longer. It's just hard to fill an hour when it's just me talking. But, with this interview today, it was easy to go over an hour. And actually, we talked for quite a while. We got about an hour and a half out of the interview. So I'm going to try to keep this. Well, I told myself I was going to try to keep this intro short, and I'm already looking at 13 minutes. Like I say, that's how I roll. But anyway, there won't be any feedback afterwards, because it's going to be kind of a long one, and I haven't gotten a lot of new feedback anyway. I do still have a few remaining from the last one that I think I mentioned. Anyway, okay, stand by. I am going to apologize for the audio. Yes, I know it annoys some of you, but and mostly you're right, by the way. I realize when I listen back that I can't hear most of the stuff that I'm complaining about, but I think it's going to be a little different in this. So here's what happened. In order to do these Skype interviews, I had to get some software, which actually this guy, Kevin, actually donated the money in my PayPal link. He sent me a link and said he knew I wanted the software, and he decided to buy it for me, and he just sent me a message in Slack and said, hey, your PayPal link worked. And I thought, he must have dumped a couple bucks in it or something. I went over there, and he had laid 30 down in there so I could get this software, which was nice of him. But anyway, it's called a call recorder for Skype. It's by a company called Ecamm, and it's really cool, but I've just never used it before. So I made the mistake of letting it set the levels, and his is a little low, but I managed to jack it up, I think, at a decent level. Mine is a little high, and the problem with that is when you go a little bit high, you get what you call clipping if it gets too loud. And like the microphone can't handle so loud. And no matter what you do, no software afterwards can fix it or anything like that. So like when I start talking in a more animated voice, and I get a little excited, my voice goes up in volume, and you'll hear it's kind of like a buzzing sound. And I apologize for this. There's nothing really I can do. I think the software is going to help a little bit by bringing the overall volume down, but that still won't affect the sound quality. It's still going to have some buzzing in there, so I apologize for that. You probably would have not, I don't know, some of you guys probably wouldn't have even noticed if I hadn't said anything, but I'm a little anal about the audio. And anyway, I thought I better explain that because I'm not used to this software. It is great. It's a great piece of software, and it worked flawlessly. It was just my error in letting Skype choose my audio input levels, and I should have done that manually. I think I've actually heard other podcasts talk about that, and I just didn't follow their advice because I'm a dumbass, basically. Anyway, all right, let's get on with this interview. This is an interview with Kevin Lowery. He is a guy I met through my Slack group, actually. He was listening to the trucking podcast with Buck and Don, link in the show notes. Actually, yeah, trucking podcast has actually decided to go bi-weekly now, so they're taking out a little bit of my competition over there. Yeah. No, Buck and I, we talk on the phone every now and then. He's a great guy. Haven't really talked to Don that much, but anyway, yeah, they're cutting back a little bit. But Kevin found out about my podcast through them, and he went over and listened to some of them. He found out I had a book. He bought the book. He, like he said, he doesn't read, so he wanted it for the audiobook. And then he contacted me personally about, because I had said that you can't download the audiobook directly to an iPhone. You could to an Android phone, but not an iPhone. And he actually figured out a way to do it kind of accidentally. And we were emailing back and forth about that. And when I found out he had an iPhone, I was like, well, why aren't you in our iTrucker Slack group? And so he joined that, and we got along like gangbusters from there. He's a real smart ass, which, I love. It was great. So I decided to have him on, especially as soon as I found out he was from Alaska. I'll mention here in the podcast that this was actually listener Steven's idea to do this podcast, but when he found out that I knew a guy from Alaska, he was like, yeah, we'll get him to do it. He's got better winter driving tips than I do. So appreciate that for Steven. Appreciate that. Anyway, I mentioned the Slack group. I should go ahead and plug that while I'm at it. That is a Slack group called iTruckers for a bunch of truckers who like Apple stuff. We got some... we haven't had any new members over there in a while, I don't think. But the Trucker Dump Slack group that we just started is coming along nicely. We got some new members in there. Steven, of course, joined immediately as soon as he found out. We got the new guy named Andrew and Nick. One of those guys, Andrew or Nick, I think it's Nick. God, sorry if I'm getting this wrong, but one of them's a huge Pumpkins fan, so that's his username in there. And it's fun over there if you're interested in that. That's just like a glorified chat room. Like I say, just download the app. It's called Slack, and send me an invite, or not, don't send me an invite, send me a request for an invitation, and I will get that out to you. Send that to truckerdump@gmail.com and put Slack in the show notes, or just click on the link in the show notes and it'll take you right to your email client. Anyway, what else do we have here? Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you want to join the iTrucker Slack group, contact Trucker Bob. Email him at itruckers@icloud.com. Oh, you know what? And I apologize to those. I realize there's some people who actually might be listening for the first time because this is an interview and there's not going to be really a blog post, so to speak. So if they want to hear this at all, they're going to have to listen to the podcast. I apologize that I have not written a blog post about this Trucker Dump Slack group. I was wondering why it wasn't growing as fast as I thought it might. And then I realized, well, I'd still bet I have a whole lot of people who don't listen to the podcast at all, and they just go to the website and read the blog post. And if they did that, they would never know I had a new Trucker Dump Slack group. I apologize. I forget about you guys sometimes because I actually prefer this podcast method, and I wish everyone would listen to the podcast version, but I realize that's just not some people's bags. So, sorry about that. I will try to remedy that by getting a blog post out on the new Trucker Dump Slack group ASAP. So anyway, I think I've covered everything with the interview process. Like I said, it was my first interview, so bear with me. I think it went fairly well, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Here you go. Winter driving tips with Alaskan truck driver Kevin Lowery. Okay, today I'm bringing you a guest, one of my first ever, Kevin Lowery. He is from Alaska. I figured there's no better guy to give us winter driving tips than a guy from Alaska. Welcome to the show, Kevin. How's it going?
Going good.
Good. Kevin and I met in the iTruckers Slack group, which, as I mentioned a billion times here on the podcast, and that's a group of a bunch of us truckers who love Apple gear, and he got on there, and I quickly figured out he's one of the biggest smartasses I've ever met, so I figured we would get along great.
Don't forget to plug your Trucker Dump group, too.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, Trucker Dump. For any of you out there who do not know yet, there's a Slack group for Trucker Dump also. If you'd like to be a part of that, we just get in there and we talk about whatever you want to talk about. Just drop me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com, and in the subject line put Slack. I'd appreciate that. We are getting some of the members from iTruckers have gone over there. You're in there now, Kevin, right? So that's cool. Yeah. And we've gotten some other members too. So it's starting to grow a little bit, not too super active, but it's a lot of fun. So cool. Thanks for reminding me of that too. All right. So today we're going to be talking about winter driving tips. Now, I wanted to do this back in December, because, well, I'm sure you've been in winter season for a long time up there, right?
A few months.
Yeah. But I had another thing that was happening in December, and it fell through. So then I thought, well, now I'll just get it in as soon as possible, and there's still some winter months. And at least, since most of these podcasts are evergreen, they'll be around for future people who are looking for tips on winter driving and stuff. Now, you drive in, it looks like to me, when you send pictures and stuff in Slack, it looks like to me you pretty much drive in snow every single day. Is that right?
Yeah, we pretty well have snowpack all winter. There's times if it hasn't snowed for several weeks that you'll get down to pavement or dirt. But for the most part, we're on snowpack.
Yeah. And it seems like you're always driving at night, too.
Well, that's because it's only light for about 4 hours a day, 4 hours this time of year.
Wow. Yeah, see, it seems like, I think in this we're probably going to be talking as much about how weird it is to drive in Alaska compared to the lower 48 than we are winter driving tips, because I'm just fascinated with this stuff. You get extended hours though up there too. You were telling us about that in the Slack group. Yeah, what's the different hours up there in Alaska?
We get 15 hours of driving rather than the 11 like you get, because we can't get anywhere in 11.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you'd end up in the middle of the nowhere all the time, and you can't get anywhere. So we get 20 hours of working to your, 14 or 15? What do you get?
We get 14.
Yeah, we get 20. 15 driving and 20 working.
Wow. So they're just pretty much okay with you being awake for 20 hours.
Yeah.
Man, see, I would be fine being awake for 20 hours one day, 1 or 2 days here and there. But I don't know. I guess guys down here would abuse it if they if they, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot less traffic up there too, right? So.
Well, yeah, and there's no incidences of driver fatigue. I mean, you get tired, you pull over, and you've got so many hours available that you don't have to push it. It's actually safer.
Yeah, what you're saying is Alaskan drivers are smarter than lower 48s.
Well, yeah, and you're not on a big wide interstate where you can just doze off. You're on a little 2-lane narrow road, and you got to sit up and pay attention, and you stay awake.
Yeah, I have seen some of your normal driving conditions of the videos you send and stuff are like, those are like the worst conditions that I would ever drive in. And I'm not afraid of snow or ice or anything, but I just choose not to drive in that stuff if I don't have to, and that's just an everyday thing for you. So hey, let's get into this a little bit. I just we made a little outline here. We'll try to follow it, but I have a feeling we're going to get off target and down into some rat holes here. But I just want to start out with some general information that every trucker should know about driving in the snow, driving in the bad weather, and in the winter season. The first things, of course, are just extra water, extra food, extra blankets, the proper clothing, stuff like that. And, in case you break down, that kind of a thing. Now, you didn't break down last night. Your truck was running for the entire 5 hours. But what happens if it isn't? What happens if your truck dies on you out there in Alaska?
You have your Arctic gear. Wait for somebody to come along.
You think down here in the lower 48, you're never going to be stranded for very long. But I recall a couple of winters ago, I broke down in Minneapolis and was sitting on the side of 494, and they said, well, tow truck will be there any minute. 5 hours later, he shows up, and my truck's not running the entire time. The APU won't run. I had every piece of clothing I had on here. I had my sleeping bag on. I had 2 comforters wrapped around me, stocking cap. But man, I was toasty warm. But man, if I didn't have all that stuff, man, I'd have frozen my nuts off.
Yeah, it gets cold in a hurry.
Yeah. All right, now, how about things to get your truck ready for the season? What do you suggest on that?
To get ready, make sure your air system's all drained out. Maybe put a little methanol into the system to further protect against it. And then just check all your winter gear and check your tire chains and go trucking.
Yeah. Do you keep a cat litter or anything like that in your truck?
No, not
really?
Generally. No.
Oh, well, you have chains, so you don't really need them, right?
Lots of tire chains.
Yeah, I bet you do. Speaking of lots of tire chains, you don't just have 18 wheels, do you?
No.
Okay, what kind of rig you running up there?
What do we have? I'd have to count them. 18,
oh, dear
19,
God.
20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. 42?
Dear God. Okay, this is a dual trailer setup, right?
Yeah, from Fairbanks to Prudhoe Bay, my normal route, we run a 5-axle trailer. But then when we go south, we pull a 4-axle pup behind that. So it depends on where you're going. We double south of Fairbanks and singles north of Fairbanks.
Jeez Louise. And you're hauling fuel, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How long you been doing that?
Steady, just at 3 years. Before that, I was a LTL driver for about 20 years, and through that time, I pulled tanker and van and flatbed and step deck and everything. But I just became a full-time tanker driver 3 years ago.
Huh. Well, and you like tankers?
Yeah. Not many straps to check, and not much more to do than hooking up a hose.
That's what I was thinking. The less you have to do outside in Alaska, probably the better the job.
Exactly.
There's not a whole lot of vans up there, I'm guessing, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I ran overnight LTL for years. In
a van. Yeah, okay.
With a van. And the wind is kind of a problem with that up here. I got tired of getting blowed around in the wind. And
yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of vans, but
yeah, I think you mentioned that one in the Slack group. Is that one of the reasons you wanted to go with tankers is because of the low profile and better in the wind?
Yeah, I got blown over one time and it kind of shook me up. I'd had enough of the wind.
Yeah. Well, okay. A couple of things I have written down here is to check your tire depth before you go into the winter season. And if you can convince your maintenance department to get a new set of tires, do it, man. You won't regret it. There's so many times I can recall that I know I've gotten out of a mess simply because I had good tread on my tires. And here I am saying this, but this year I looked at my tread and it's not that great, and I haven't bothered to mention it because I really haven't been in any snow yet, but I need to get into a yard and tell them to swap these tires out, and hopefully they will. Yeah. Another thing is just to know if you need to have chains on your truck, right? I mean, obviously you guys, God, how many chains you 42 wheels. How many chains do you have to carry?
I just carry 2 sets of 3 railers for the drivers to where you can chain up all 8 drivers, and 1 or 2 steer chains in case you got to chain up a steer axle, usually just 1 steer chain. And if you see a bunch of freezing rain coming or something like that, I have a set of single trailer chains that are in the back of my pickup that I'll throw on the deck of the truck if the weather report looks like I'm going to need it. But in my 23 years trucking in Alaska, I've probably put a drag chain on a half a dozen times.
Yeah. Well, they don't have the laws up there about chains and stuff. I mean, they just leave it up to your discretion, right?
Yeah, really the only citation I've ever heard of is there was a truck up here I remember on the knob from the lower 48 that did not have enough chains to get the job done. And he got cited something for not being equipped to do the job. But no, we don't have any laws that tells us when to chain up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, boy, down here in the lower 48, there's all kinds of different rules depending on where you are, how many drag change you need for the trailer and how many you need on the drives, and it's just a complete nightmare, which I think is why really most, other than chains being a pain in the butt, I think most drivers just don't want to mess with it, so they don't even put them on if they don't have to. And the good thing is a lot of carriers nowadays don't even require you to do that.
Yeah, I remember back in the early 90s when I was trucking in Oregon, there, going over Hood or Santiam, there's always signs that say chains are required. No such thing up here.
Yeah. We get that pretty much anywhere west of the Rockies. Well, including the Rockies, obviously.
Yeah.
They've got laws that you have to have them on there. I actually got turned around this year. I got to Grand Junction and forgot I didn't have any chains, and it was in September. And I was just going to run across because I had been delayed a lot, and I was just going to take my chances. I'd already been through the scale, and they didn't check, so I was just going to run it. And my boss called and turned me around. It really sucked. All right. Let's see. What do we got next on our list here? How about, I always like to know if I have heated fuel tanks and DEF tanks. I've worked for companies that don't. And boy, that's a pain in the butt because you're always dealing with that anti-gel stuff. But I always like to find out if you have those kind of, and if what you need to do to keep those running. Like does the motor need to be running, or does the just like for me, if my auto start stop thing for my APU is on, where it will start the truck if it gets low on battery juice or whatever, as long as that thing is working, as long as that thing is turned on, then I know that my fuel heaters are working. So that's nice because I haven't put anti-gel in anything for ages. Do you use anti-gel up there at all?
No, we have heated tanks, but like right now mine are shut off. It's well below zero, so we're just running straight number 1. And when we're running number 1, I just turn the tank heaters off because you get a little more power with cold fuel. But when it's not quite so cold, we'll run blended fuel or straight number 2 in the summertime. And yeah, we have tank heaters that are just run off engine coolant.
Huh.
There's valves on the side of the motor to turn them on or off.
Huh. Yeah, I've never really known how those things worked. I just know it works. If they have it, they have it.
There is some systems that circulate the fuel. When I was an owner operator, I had a 99 that had a fuel heater mounted on the side of the frame, and all it really did is sense the temperature of the fuel, and if it was still cold, it'd route it back through the draw line again through the motor, and then it would only return really warm fuel to the fuel tank so that the circulating fuel would keep the fuel warm.
Huh.
It was a pretty good system.
Well, your truck would have to be running for that, obviously, right?
Well, yeah, and it'd have to be running for the in-tank heaters too that run off coolant. Your coolant's got to be warm to heat the fuel. Not aware of any system that would heat the fuel without the truck running.
Oh, well, well, maybe mine doesn't. Maybe I need to re-examine this because the way I understood it, if I had that switch on, that I didn't need to add anti-gel. I haven't been in that many super cold temperatures yet, so yeah, I probably ought to check that out before I go any further.
Yeah, something would have to power it, and to heat up 200 gallons of fuel, that would take a lot of battery power, so I doubt it's working when the truck's off.
Well, thanks. You're just full of great news. I guess I'd rather find out now than, on the side of the road somewhere, right?
Yeah, just carry a can of Power Service 911 and you'll be good to go. It'll thaw out anything.
Oh, will it? Okay. Yeah, I probably ought to do that. Probably ought to stock up on some of that. I probably couldn't hurt to put some anti-gel in here just in case too. Although, does that stuff work after the fact, or does the 911 only work after it's frozen?
The 911 is designed to work after it's frozen. It would take a lot of the anti-gel to thaw it back out.
Okay. What do you use in DEF? Do you know?
The truck I'm running now doesn't have it anymore. We have had so many emission troubles in the cold that we've went to glider kits.
Oh, okay.
And I've got a new truck now with an old C15 in it. And so I'm not running it. But the previous two trucks I had here had DEF, and at 20 below, the system just shuts down and it all freezes up and it forgets about it and doesn't use it. Above 20 below, it has heaters in the tank to keep it warm and heated lines to keep it warm, and it works so. And then when you stop and shut the truck off, you will hear the system purging. It purges all the lines out. There's a pump in there running that pumps all the DEF out of all the lines and puts all the DEF in the tank, and then it just freezes solid. And then when you start the truck back up, the heater comes on, and once it's thawed out, then it'll start circulating it again.
Huh. Do you know if that sounds almost like a Alaska thing for extreme north?
Well, and yeah, I'm not sure if that's the way all of them are, or if that's the way ours are programmed.
Yeah.
But that's the way they work up here.
I just kind of wondered what you did, because, DEF is nothing like fuel, obviously. So, I don't think you could just dump anti-gel in your DEF. I don't think that would turn out well.
No, it's mainly water is what it is.
Yeah, so I don't know how you would unthaw that stuff if you needed to. Oh well.
Yeah, it freezes up solid because I've had some that I've taken up north. We had a washout up there, and they needed some up north and put it on the back of the truck. And when I got there, it was big blocks of ice. It freezes just like water.
Wow. Well, I have noticed this year that I have only been to one fuel station so far that had frozen DEF. I remember even last year and the year before, when it was newer, man, if you went to a station in the winter and it was below freezing, that stuff was frozen up and there just wasn't anything you could do about it. That's in the pumps itself, so I don't know what they're doing different. I'm wondering if they're adding, if they just have better storage tanks that are heated to keep it from doing that, or whether they've added something to the actual DEF. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's working better, and I'm happy about that.
You have DEF pumps like next to the diesel pumps? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that high tech? We have plastic jugs.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, we had that for quite a few years, but now we just have a DEF. It's just basically like pumping reefer fuel. You hit an extra, when you're typing in your information, you say if you want, regular truck diesel, if you want reefer, and then if you want DEF. And then once you hang up the main hose, you just hit the button for the DEF and you pump it right in.
High tech.
It's nice. See, we have this stuff called technology down here, in the lower 48, not up there in the great north.
Yeah, we have paper logs up here in the Wild West, though.
Curse you. Damn you. All right. Okay, here's something that is a question. Winter fronts, do you use them or do you not?
Yeah, I use one.
Okay.
Especially on this old school C15. It's almost all the way closed right now, but it really depends on the engine manufacturer and what they recommend.
Mm-hmm.
There are some engines, I know, like a Detroit and a Freightliner, there is a sensor in the grill that gets confused if you cover it up with the winter front, and you'll start getting check engine lights.
Huh.
And it just all depends on the engine and if you can maintain temperature without it.
So I guess the key here is really to just check with your manufacturer, with your maintenance department, and find out what they want you to do, right?
Yeah, if you're going to be in below zero temperatures for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I used to run some Freightliners that had, the snaps on the front, and they would include the winter front thing with it. And you'd think, well, okay, then they want you to use it. But, my current ProStar International doesn't have that. And I've never seen a winter front in here. So I don't really know what they expect me to do. I've just never worried about it.
Yeah, if it'll maintain engine temperature without it, I wouldn't worry about it. But
yeah. Well, like I said, I guess it's just one of those things, kind of like the anti-gel and the heated fuel tanks. Just check with your maintenance department if you have one, if you're not an owner-operator, and ask them what the recommended thing to do is. Now, here's another thing you mentioned in here that I had never heard of when you put it in the notes. I was like, what in the hell is a belly tarp? I have never heard of that.
Basically just a tarp that goes from frame rail to frame rail underneath the oil pan. You tarp the whole underside of the motor to keep the wind from blowing up through there. We get in a lot of blows, and sometimes you get stuck in a blow where you can't get through. When you've got high cold winds with blowing snow howling under the truck, you can't keep the motor warmed up. Or, the oil gets so cold from the wind blowing up through there, and it's basically just a tarp to stop the wind and hold the heat into the engine compartment.
Now, is that a specially designed thing, or is that just a tarp you buy at Walmart and you use bungees to strap it under there?
We get them built at a local canvas place. It's basically just a square tarp with eyelets around it, but at Walmart you can't really get a tarp that'll fit.
Yeah.
It'll be too wide, but it's just basically a chunk of fire resistant canvas like you'd build a winter front out of with eyelets in it that's bungee cord to the frame rail.
Okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I've actually been in cold enough temperatures, in North Dakota, up here, that there has been times when I've been driving along that it just wouldn't keep, it's so darn cold that I couldn't keep it warm in the cab. And so I know there's been times, I guess it just happens so rarely that we never have to worry about it, really. All right. Let's go on. Just one little tip. Probably most of you know that if you're going to be in bad weather and your truck's going to be sitting over the weekend or whatever, just lift up the wipers. And that way, you see people in Minnesota do this all the time with their cars, and North Dakota, Wisconsin. That way, when you come back, your windshield wipers aren't frozen to your windshield. That's a fairly obvious one, I think. Now, listener Steven, listener Steven was actually going to do this podcast with me. It was his idea to do the winter stuff. You guys might remember Steven, I think it was episode 111 that he co-hosted with me. And he was one who suggested this. So he's got some tips in here too, or some things he thought we ought to talk about. But when he found out I could get a hold of Kevin, who was a guy from Alaska, he was like, oh yeah, use him by all means. So that was cool of Steven to
Gee, thanks, Steven.
Yeah, he gave up his spot. So I thought that was pretty cool. But he mentions, and I saw this online a little bit too, that some people are saying that if you have a mixture of vinegar and water sprayed on your windshield, that it will prevent icing. Well, yeah, no?
It sounds like a mess to me.
Yeah.
But I've never tried it, so give it a shot. Let me know how it turns out.
Yeah, from what I saw Yeah, from what I saw online, that if ice is already formed, it doesn't do anything. It just causes a mess. But if you spray it on there before, it kind of helps. And I'm like, well, if it only kind of helps, what's the point? You know? So, all right. Okay. Here's a question I want to know because it just happened to me the other day. Is it wise to put alcohol in your wiper fluid?
We run methanol in the wiper fluid, which is basically alcohol. It's probably better to run like 40 below wiper fluid that has some cleaning agents in it. Something like straight methanol kind of eats up the rubber components. It's hard on the wiper blades, and it doesn't really clean the window. It thaws out the ice, but it just kind of makes a smeary mess.
Oh, well, that's what I'd kind of heard, that it was bad on all the rubber parts. So I'd never done it. But the problem is these like, you know, when you work for a fairly large company like me, you know, they fill it up with whatever they use. And, you know, I mean, what am I supposed to do when it comes winter? Drain it all? All they're going to do is put their crap back in it. So I don't know what to do about that, really.
Yeah, they make wiper fluid that's for really cold, but it's a matter of if you can get it or not. A guy might just take whatever the crap that they put in it and add some methanol or alcohol to it to drop the freezing point.
Yeah, because mine always, you know, I look under my hood and it's not frozen in the tank, but you know, it gets frozen in the lines coming up to the wipers, and then it's virtually worthless. You know.
Yeah, the engine heat keeps the tank thawed out, but
that makes sense.
Like you say, the line that goes up the wiper arm is out in the wind and it freezes solid.
Yeah. So instead I end up, you know, holding my bottle of Windex out the window, squirting it on the windshield as I, you know, got the wipers on.
I do that with aerosol cans of de-icer. Works great.
Hey, didn't think about that. And that stuff squirts farther too, right?
Yep.
Oh, but you're brilliant. Freaking brilliant.
You just keep a can right next to the seat. Just make sure that the seat isn't going to bust it when it goes down.
Yeah, that would be bad, I'm guessing.
Don't tell me how I know.
So I guess that's what you use, just that regular de-icer, just to keep your windshield de-iced?
Yep, in the aerosol can.
Cool, man. Dang it, you're costing me money. Now I got to go buy Anagel. I got to go buy 911. I got to go buy de-icer. God, you're costing me money. You know how cheap I am. This is uncool, man.
Well, you guys in the Slack group made me buy a set of them AirPods, so payback.
That was them, not me. I have willpower. You guys are weak.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What I often say, I have willpower, willpower actually means that I'm just really, really cheap.
Okay.
All right, let's get into sliding the tandems on snow and ice. You probably don't even have to do this anymore, do you?
No, I haven't did it in about 3 years. Ours are all fixed.
Do you even have bridge laws up there?
Oh yeah, that's basically all we have. Is bridge laws, the overall length for the most part, and axle weights. Yeah, we have lots of scales.
Oh, okay. Huh. I figured they just kind of let it go up there, but I guess not.
No, our weights are considerably higher than yours, but the tolerances are pretty tight.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, Steven suggested in here, he had heard that, and he wasn't sure about this. He just suggested he heard swapping airlines will help, like putting your red on your blue and your blue on your red. And that made no sense to me. Does that make any sense to you?
Makes zero sense to me. That would just blow air out the quick release on the blue. So I don't know. There is some trailers that have 3 glad hands on them. I've seen it more on step decks that stretch. And the 3rd glad hand, you hook the red to it, and that is what releases the pins. And when you pull the red off of the red, it sets the brakes, and then you hook it to the 3rd one, and that will release the pins. But that is the only glad hand swapping I've ever heard of. I don't think hooking the red to the blue would do anything.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me. I saw one person online say that the red actually kicks out a higher air pressure than the blue, but I don't think that's true, is it?
Not if your Johnny bar gauge will go up to 120, just like your air pressure. It'd be the same.
Yeah, both my air gauges in here read about the same. So I just assume that's what's getting kicked out of that tank is, the 120 or whatever it is.
Yeah, on the primary and secondary, but do you have an application gauge?
No.
Okay, well, the application gauge would be the blue line.
Right.
Mine will go to 120, just like the primary and secondary. So
okay, so
you're not going to get any more pressure. But once you pull the red line, the brakes are going to be set with the maxi cans anyhow. So
right,
you're not going to do any more by hooking to the blue.
Huh. Well, okay. Well, the one thing I have used to slide these things, but you got to be careful, is backing up against a curb. Yep. If you can't, that's for sliding them back, obviously. But you certainly don't want to overshoot it, because it's going to do you no good if you try to drag it back forward unless you put your tires on the other side of the curb. And if you're going to do this, make sure that you don't rip your mud flap off in the process.
Is this experience speaking?
Yeah, maybe. No comment. I have also used this Johnny bar, though, to actually build up a little bit of momentum, and then just pull the red brake. Just pull it and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I've done both. I've driven, and then I've jammed on the Johnny brake to see if it'll unlock. And if that doesn't work, then I will actually, get rolling about 10 mile an hour and then pull the red brake and see if but be prepared for a jar if it does work. Because it hits hard.
Well, and another thing on that is the initial problem is getting it broke loose.
Yeah.
And even if you're trying to slide it back, you may have to slide it forward a foot before you can get it to slide back. If it won't go back, slide it forward a foot, and that kind of frees up a foot of rail. And then when you head back with it, it gets a run at whatever had it stuck. And
that's a great idea. Yeah, I had not thought about that. But
break loose the rust and dirt and mud and snow, whatever's holding it.
Yeah.
Work it back and forth. You can do the same thing with a fifth wheel.
Huh. Well, yeah, you could if your fifth wheel slides. Mine's supposed to slide, but ever since I got it, it will not slide. I've had sledgehammers on it. I've had other guys hit it with sledgehammers. I've done everything, and something about this thing. The pins are releasing, it's just locked up, and I can't ever move it. So, oh well.
Just drop the trailer and park about 4 feet out in front of it and get a run at it. It'll break.
Yeah. Well, with all the crazy idling thing my truck has been doing lately, I have a feeling it's going into the shop anyway pretty soon. I got a check engine light on right now that I have no idea what it is. So I have a feeling I'm not even going to mention it until I go home next, and I'll put it in my local shop and I'll have them look at that fifth wheel while they're at it.
Just trade it in. Time for a new one.
If it was mine. Actually, if it was mine, I'd just keep it until the wheels fell off of it, because I'm cheap. That's the way I roll.
I see.
Okay, let's get on with some actual driving tips. My first tip is just to pick your freaking battles. Now, you don't really have that option a lot of times up there. I assume if it's snowing, you don't have the option to just say, "No, I'm not driving today." You got to do it anyway.
Well, more so now. Back when I was running overnight LTL, I didn't have a choice. You had to go. But
right
now, if the weather looks very extreme, mainly something like freezing rain or zero visibility, I'll get a text that says, "Park it. We'll try again tomorrow." It's a safety concern.
Yeah.
With fuel more so than something that is high critical freight.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess, because LTL freight too is expected to be there at a certain time or whatever, whereas fuel, they've got enough in their storage tanks to not run out if you miss a day.
Exactly. They don't want to risk it when it gets real extreme. But
yeah,
our general everyday driving is bad weather, but when it gets too bad, nope, we don't go.
Yeah, there's just a time when I look at the weather and I think, okay, if I can go about 45 mile an hour, I'll move. But if I got to go any slower than that, it's just not, just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, yeah, just like driver Chris today from the Slack group. He went out on the road and he said it was terrible. And he found the next place to park it. And about 10 minutes later, he posted up that Twitter link that said the road was closed because of an accident.
Yeah, that was our next thing on the list, was use your own judgment, because so many times your trucking company's trying to get you to move. And, like they were trying to get him to move one day. And they said, hey, why aren't you moving? And there was black ice conditions and, high winds and everything. And he said, well, call the safety department and ask them. I thought, yeah, that's brilliant, because the safety department isn't they're gonna back him, not the dispatcher on that.
Yep, you end up sliding off the road. Guess whose fault it is?
That's true. Yep. Well, obviously, when you're driving, you want to increase your following distance. That's a no-brainer. You want to do everything as smoothly as you can. These are just common sense things that every trucker should know, but it's amazing. It's amazing to me sometimes, I'll be flying 55 mile an hour on a snowpack road, and I see people in a ditch and I'm thinking, how'd they get there? Because this is, it seems all grippy, everything's fine. I'm not sliding all over the place, and I'm just accelerating slowly. I'm turning slowly. I'm braking slowly. Everything is slowly. I guess these guys are just driving like they normally do, and they're just not paying attention. I don't understand how so many guys end up in the ditch. It just makes no sense to me. But, that's just common sense stuff, Just do everything easy when you're on the snow and ice.
Slow and steady goes far in a day.
Yeah. And I think this was one of your tips. You put keep the speed down, but don't be a hindrance. Is that what that was yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're impeding traffic and it's beyond your ability, you need to follow your advice and get out of my way. you get traffic stacked up behind you being a hindrance, then people start passing unsafely, and you're in the middle of a terrible mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate it when guys use flashers. I just hate it. I think if you've got to use your flashers, then, well, for one, all you're doing is blinding everybody around you, especially at night. Yep. And if you got to use your flashers, you just need to get off the stinking road. That's the way I think. But, oh well. What do we got next? Okay, here's some. Okay, you really got into these things and made a lot of sense to me that I had not really thought about. Okay, now I put in here, keep momentum going up, climbing up the hills.
Yes,
and that's very important. You see so many guys, they're so worried about the snow and ice that they're going slow, and they don't bother to gain any momentum to get up the hill, and then they spin out on the top of the hill. Right? Yeah. But you had some tips on what you should do if you start to lose traction going up a hill. What do you suggest?
Oh, what do we have in here? Things like if you start slipping, you got to back off the throttle and get it to hook back up. A lot of guys that have never drove on anything slick, they start slipping and they'll just bury their foot in it, and you'll just burn to a stop. If you're not hooked up, you're not going anywhere. You got to back out of it and keep it hooked up. And if you back out of it so far to keep it hooked up that you finally run out of RPMs, then grab a couple more gears and keep backing out of it and keep them tires hooked up, and you can get on up the hill. But if you just bury your foot in it, you're just going to burn to a stop. Yeah.
And that was another one of your tips too, was to keep the RPMs up on that, right?
Yeah, if you keep the RPMs up, you're up out of the torque, so it's less likely to slip to start with. If you're, on a real hard grade where you'd normally be chugging along, at 1,200 RPMs doing what your company says to get fuel mileage. Well, if it's real slick out, you get them RPMs up out of the torque, and it won't take off slipping on you. And if it does, you've got more to play with to back out of it to get it to hook up. If you're down there lugging the piss out of it and it starts slipping, you're done, because there's nothing to play with.
Right. That makes total sense. Yeah.
And I think another thing in there is don't just be a sheep and follow the tracks that everybody else made up the hill. The traction is usually best the closer to the shoulder you get. If the state's been out sanding or whatever, all that sand will get blowed over to the shoulder, and there's a lot better grip out of the pack tracks. Snow has better traction than packed ice by far.
Right.
If you're having trouble, get out of the beaten path, and there's probably some grit out there.
Yeah, I could see where for a newbie it would make sense to just follow the tracks, but and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to go get into that deeper snow. That'd be bad. But no, that's actually way, way better.
Yep.
And you'll find that on the side.
Don't go too far to the side and fall in the ditch, but.
Yeah, Steven put it in here. You're getting too close to the side if you feel the rumble strips. And I was like, yeah, well, depending on how much snow. If there's enough snow, you're not going to feel those rumble strips. But
those rumble strips have good traction.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. But I would say if you have to use the rumble strips to find the edge of the road, you probably shouldn't be on the road. That'd be my guess.
It would be nice to have rumble strips. Those things would be nice.
Yeah, you don't have that on those 2-lane roads. Yeah. Missouri have some really annoying ones where, a lot of times the rumble strips will be outside the white line on the side, but Missouri puts it right on the white line. So, if you stray for 1 second, it buzzes you. God, the evil overlord used to hate me in Missouri because, if I didn't pay attention for 1 second, she's back there sleeping, she'd go, what's going on up there?
I can relate to that. We have rumble strips between here and Anchorage, and whenever me and the wife go to Anchorage, if she gets to dozing off in the passenger seat, I drive down the rumble strips.
Yeah, there you go. A little scare. Nice.
Yep.
Hey, you had another thing about going up the hills. You said to coast to a stop. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. If you've tried everything, backed out of it, grabbed some gears, backed out of it, and you figure out you're not going to make it up the hill, don't just burn to a stop, because those spinning tires are creating a very slick surface.
Okay.
And if you burn to a stop, you're immediately going to head back down the hill backwards on that slick surface that you created.
Okay.
Once you figured out you're not going to make it and you're barely moving, shove the clutch in and coast ahead a few feet to get off of that slick surface that you've created so that you can set your brakes without it taking off down the hill and you can get out and chain up.
Okay. Makes good sense.
Does that make sense?
Yep. It does make good sense. Another one of those things that you wouldn't really think about. I think any experienced driver knows not to just mash on it and that's never going to do you any good. It will actually, sometimes even cause a divot in the road where you're just stuck right in that divot, if you just keep burning like that. But you can't expect a newbie to know that, really,
Yeah, and that's what you would think, but I see it happen often, not often, but a few times a winter where you see tracks that go up the hill where somebody just had their foot buried in it, thinking it was going to get a hold of something. So it does happen, and maybe some people just don't know.
Yeah. Well, good point. Okay. Here's a question. The old debate, the Jake brake. Do you use it on the snow or not?
Modern engine brakes are basically wired in through the ABS.
Okay.
And old school, an engine brake could kill the motor. You get on something slick and lose traction, it'd kill the motor, and then you're in a real pickle.
Okay.
But modern engines won't do that. They will kick on and off, and basically, as long as they're properly working, basically work like ABS brakes. So I use it every day.
See, that is what I have always thought too. As long as these trucks have had ABS, I didn't know all that technical stuff because I basically suck at anything mechanical, but it just made sense to me that it makes more sense to me for the engine to slow the wheel to slow the wheel from turning than it does for me to apply a brake. I don't know if there's any logic to that, but it just always made sense to me, and so I have always used Jake brakes on the snow also.
Well, and you have an indication as far as RPM, what it's doing. That RPM will drop rapidly if it's locking up. You can feel it in the engine brake instantly when it's starting to slide.
Yeah.
Whereas applying a foot pedal, you could have a few of them locked up and not even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. You actually put this on your note too, that, where is it? I thought it was where is it? Oh, there it is. If you're sliding, you're riding. I love that. That's great.
Yep, that's basically boils down to it. If things are locked up and you're sliding, you might as well just kick back and watch a movie and enjoy the ride because you're not driving anymore.
Yeah, last year I was on a U.S. highway in South Dakota, and I topped this hill. And just as I came across, I looked at the bottom, and there was a bunch of lights down there, and there was cars backed up and everything. And I thought, oh, my God. And I just barely tapped the brake. And I had no idea. I thought I wasn't slowing down at all. But for some reason, I had the wherewithal to look in my mirror, and my trailer was coming around on me. And I had no idea. I couldn't tell at all. It felt like it was tracking right behind me. And I just let off the brake. I started coasting down the hill, which seems counterintuitive, when you're coming up on a bunch of lights and stuff. But I actually managed to get it back under control and get stopped in time, just because I let off the brake going down a hill. And it made no sense. But I guess it was just, 18 years of experience at the time telling me, you're not doing any good with your foot on the brake.
Yeah, if you just kept your foot mashed on the brake, you would have just been part of the mess at the bottom of the hill.
Yep.
And that was in the notes, too, is always keep an eye on that. I mean, if you got to jump on the brakes for an animal or a car or whatever, keep one eye glancing on that trailer because who knows where it's going.
Yeah. True. And, speaking of animals, I've been watching some Netflix, and I've seen it like 3 times in the last few times I've been watching Netflix where people are driving along and they see an animal and then they wreck and run into the ditch rather than hit the animal. That's stupid. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Especially in a truck. There's no trucking company out there that's going to fault you for hitting a deer, rather than putting their truck in the ditch and rolling it over.
Yeah, when you're upside down in the ditch because of a moose, you better have hair in the grill.
That's a good point. A moose is one of those things that I've always wanted to see on the road, and I have never seen one.
I see them every day, and believe me, I wouldn't mind if I never saw another one.
Yeah, I bet. I just hear they're so... I hear for somebody like me who's never really seen one in person that they are so much bigger than you think they're going to be.
Oh, they're huge, and I've only ever hit one, and it just kind of clipped him, but I've seen it'll completely destroy the hood of a truck. I mean, wipe out the whole front.
Yeah. I've always wanted to see one from a distance,
Yeah.
The evil overlord actually saw a mountain lion one time going down. She was going down an icy hill outside of Laramie, Wyoming, and she was going down an icy hill, and this mountain lion just leapt out into the road. She shrieked like a mountain lion. She screamed so loud it scared her so bad. But it took one leap out into the middle of the road and then one leap into the median and took off across. She could not believe she had just seen that. She sees all the cool crap. I never get to see anything.
Kodak moment.
I know. Yeah. All right. Okay, you had a couple other tips, and I just saw this just the other day. Keep your taillights clean when you're driving. Just pull over every now and then, check them. I saw this. It was clear and bright and sunny out, and it was cold, and I don't know how close this guy had come from to the snow or anything, but you could not see any of his taillights. They were completely covered with snow. So that's not good. And I imagine if somebody hits you in the rear end and the cop sees that, that's going on a report somewhere.
Yeah, unless he hits you hard enough to knock the snow off of him.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for that then, right? No, but I mean, I didn't know of any snow in the whole area. So what that told me is either the guy drove in the snow the night before and he got up and didn't do a pre-trip inspection and walk around, and wipe the snow off, or he didn't bother to stop after he got out of driving in the snow and wipe all the crap off. Either way, he was wrong.
Yep. So
he shouldn't have done that. Okay, you have one last tip here for driving. There's actually a couple more. I missed one up here. You say keep the brakes dry. And how do you do that?
Just a little light application. If you're running through snow dust, snow, stuff like that, they'll get snow up in there, and then when you need to use them, they're not there. It takes a while for them to get a hold because of that in there.
Uh-huh.
And the other problem is when you go to park, if they're not dried out, they'll freeze and then you're stuck. But to dry them out, you just apply a little bit of pressure. You're driving down the road at 60 miles an hour or something. Just put like 5 pounds of pressure on them for 10, 20 seconds and just warm them up and dry them out until you feel them pulling down real good. Then you're good to go.
Yeah. Since you mentioned parking here in this, keeping the brakes dry and everything, we have a few things on the parking here. And one of those things is simply to not set your trailer brakes in the winter unless you have to. But also, if you think you're going to need to, well, really any time before you're getting ready to stop, if you know you're going to stop, you should apply some pressure to those brakes, just light pressure, kind of dry those out before you stop for the night.
Yes.
Yeah. I had some frozen brakes just the other day. I grabbed the oldest trailer on the lot and got them unlocked within a few minutes. And the next morning, I noticed a guy was out there in one of our brand new trailers, and he was out there for about 30 minutes trying to get those things unstuck. I don't know what the difference is, but I was grateful I grabbed the old trailer.
Well, it has a lot to do with what the last guy did that parked it too. If you're hooking up to a parked trailer and the last guy came in with them all wet, immediately set them and didn't let them cool,
yeah,
and didn't have them dried out, you could have a real time getting that trailer to move again.
How long does it take to dry out brakes?
As far as going down the road?
No, just like if you were to pull in and you had forgotten to apply light pressure and stuff, how long should you sit there before you set them? Well, you shouldn't set them at all if you don't have to.
Yeah,
in the winter.
It entirely depends on the temperature.
Okay.
I mean, if it's really, really cold, they'll, freeze and dry pretty rapidly. But if it's 30 degrees out, it's going to take forever for them to dry out on their own. It just all depends on the temperature and what you have been running in.
Right. Okay.
What's in them.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is none of this really applies to disc brakes so much. They don't have the same problems as drum brakes.
Yeah.
They rarely freeze up, and you don't really need to dry them out. They're a lot better in the snow and stuff like that. They don't have those problems, but once in a while they will freeze up, and once they do, it takes a big hammer to get them broken.
Now, I don't know this for a fact, but every company I've ever driven for has always had drum brakes, so it's never been really an issue.
Yeah, our trailers, a lot of the middle-aged trailers have disc brakes. The older trailers have drum, and then the newer trailers, they went to discs. But after a few years of that on the haul road, the discs do not do well in the mud and dirt and rocks. The calipers were seizing up, causing problems. So now our new trailers are back to drum brakes. So it just depends on the company and the application.
Yeah. Now, in the Slack group, we were talking the other day about the hammers. And it's so important to have a bigger hammer than just like a regular old claw or a ball peen hammer for when these brakes freeze up.
Yeah, you could beat on a brake drum for a week with a claw hammer and you'd never get it broke loose. The bigger, the better.
Yeah. I think I was looking at mine, and I think mine feels like about a 3-pounder, but I'm not sure about that. But it's got a fairly long handle, so I can get some as much swinging as I can underneath the trailer. I actually felt kind of sorry for that guy the other day because he was a really big guy. And it's like, I know crawling under that trailer was not good, was not easy for him. Had I not needed to go someplace myself, I probably would have offered to get under there and smack him for him myself. But
the other thing you want to make sure before you go under there to smack them is that you set your tractor brakes.
Yeah.
When you're trying to get that trailer to move and it's froze up, it can happen. You jump out of the truck and head to the trailer to get it broke loose, and when you break it loose, it rolls over the top of you because you forgot to set your tractor brakes.
Yeah, I think I tweeted something about that's not really a two-man. Beating on brakes is not really a two-man job because you got to be, setting your brakes and getting under there anyway, because it's not like I'm going to lay underneath the truck while he rolls back and forth, with me smacking on the brakes. I don't like anyone that much.
Yeah. The only time that works if you have a really long-handled, heavy sledgehammer and steel wheels on the trailer. If the driver just slowly moves the trailer, like low geared and idle, and then whack the steel wheel on the outside.
Right.
Sometimes works if it's in a yucky parking lot where you're just absolutely do not want to climb underneath of it. But
Yeah.
It's a little hard on wheel paint.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine most companies wouldn't really appreciate that.
No, and definitely don't do it on aluminum wheels.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's probably good.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other tips on parking while we're doing this, and then we'll finish up the driving section. We mentioned avoid setting your trailer brakes unless you absolutely need to, which you might need to, if you're in a dock or something like that. I was in a really icy dock the other day, and if my tractor was actually on the ice, and so if I had not set the trailer, they could have driven a forklift right onto my truck and scooted me right out into the road. But I had to set them. Thankfully, they came undone. And a couple other tips for parking is to make sure you roll back and forth to pack the snow when you pull in. Right?
Yeah. The other thing that will happen in that, if you get it packed down so you can roll out in the morning without cutting a new track. But the other thing, if you pull into like a snowpack parking lot and it's warmer, when you stop, those tires are warm and they'll actually melt in just a little tiny bit and make a little divot. But when you get 18 wheels in
all
a little
divoted.
divot,
right,
you're stuck. You're on flat ground and it will not move. So if you pull in and you pack it a little bit and then sit there for 10 minutes and do your paperwork or whatever, then move a foot and get out of those little divots.
Okay.
It'll be a whole lot better in 10 hours when it's time to go than being stuck.
Okay. I had not really even thought about that, but I don't think I have to worry about that very much because of the last tip that I have, and that's always if you are in a parking lot and you have the option to park with your nose down, always do it.
You roll out of bed.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay.
End of discussion. Okay, I think we had just, let me look real fast. I think we just have one more thing on the driving, and that was, you mentioned the mirror heaters off. Why?
Yeah, if you're driving when it's real cold, the traction will be really...
What's real cold? Wait, what's real cold to you? What is real cold? That doesn't count because you're an Alaskan driver, but
yeah,
for us normal people,
it's supposed to hit 50 below next week, and yeah, that's real cold. But
yeah, that rarely happens here.
Let's say it's below 20 degrees,
okay,
or 15 or something like that, and you're on snowpack, winter roads. The traction will be really good. The colder it gets, the better the traction is.
Okay.
The slickest road is a snow-packed road at 32 degrees.
Yeah,
is as slick as it gets.
Yeah.
Well, if you're driving along at 20 degrees or 15 degrees and the traction's real good and you're just having a fine day, you don't really need the mirror heat on. Everything's good. If you have the mirror heat off and you suddenly come into a warm front and you don't realize it, your mirrors will instantly fog up. If you're driving along at 20 and you suddenly hit something that's 30, those mirrors will fog.
Okay.
You can then hit the mirror heat and thaw the mirror out, but you instantly know that it warmed up a substantial amount and that road surface has changed.
Starting to get slick as snot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to get really slick, and that mirror fog is just a warning sign. It's just a notification device that you've probably hit someplace that's a lot warmer than you were in.
Okay. That makes total sense. And that brings us right on to this the ever confusing world of what should you do in different conditions to keep your windshield clear. There are so many wives' tales about this, and I've had guys say, crack your windows, put all the heat in the floorboard, make it as hot as you can. Other people say leave it as cold as you can, and there's just all kinds of confusion, and I never know what to do when, 19 years of experience, and I'm never sure what I'm supposed to do to keep the windshield clear. So what are your suggestions on this?
It really depends on what conditions you're in. If it's really cold out and it's snowing, it's best to keep it cool in the cab and all the heat on the floor. And that way, if the windshield's cold, snow does not stick to a cold surface, and you can keep from getting all that buildup on the windshield where if you have your heat up on the window, as the snow hits the windshield, depending on the aerodynamics of the truck, it will just keep building up and freezing up, and you end up with an icy mess.
Okay, because as soon as the cold snow hits the warm windshield, it melts, and then you've got that icy crap that's just going to build up on your wipers, basically.
Exactly. So if you can get by with a cold windshield, that is the best. But there's a point when the outside temperature is, warmer, or even it's freezing rain or freezing fog or anything like that, then you got to start cranking the heat to the windshield just to whatever point it takes to keep it clear enough to see where you're going. We get an ice fog where you actually flip the visors down to help hold the heat against the window and crank the defroster on, crank the heat all the way and the fan on medium, and just get that window, hot to keep it melted off.
Okay, now you said something there. Now, I have always done the visor thing, about halfway down to try to keep the heat up on the windshield. I've always done that. But you mentioned something about the fan being on medium. I had never heard of that before, but explain what you meant by that. It makes total sense once you hear it.
Depending on the truck and the size of the heater core, most of the trucks I've ever had, drove, Peterbilt I'm driving now, the heater core is not big enough to stay hot when you've got that fan cranked, because on defrost, the fan is sucking air in from the outside. So it's because if it was sucking air from the inside, your windows would just ice over and fog up, and it can't dry that air out. So the air is actually coming from the outside and going through the air conditioning core to dry the air, and then it goes through the heater core, so you've got really cold air coming in. And if you've got the fan blasting on high, you're moving such a volume of air that the heater core can't keep up, and you're actually blowing colder air.
Okay.
If you've got the fan on medium, you're not moving, maybe half as much air, but the air that you are moving is twice as hot, and you're going to get that window a lot hotter with hot air than you are with warm air.
Okay.
That the high setting on the fan, on the heater, is more for air conditioning, when you want a breeze in your face. But
right.
High on the defroster, you just end up blowing, if it's cold outside, you end up blowing cold air because the heater core just can't keep up.
Well, I have certainly been doing that wrong all these years.
When you can actually feel it, crank it up on high for, 10 minutes and stick your hand up there on the dash and feel it. You can kind of sense how hot it is, and then turn it on medium for 10 minutes and then stick your hand up there, and you're going to find it to be a lot hotter on medium than it is on high.
Well, I'll be dang. Good tip. I had never, ever heard that before. Okay, but all right, so we've covered cold snow, we've covered blowing snow, we've covered ice fog, but when it's warm, like a warm snow, like right around that 32 degrees, you said there really isn't, you're just screwed, basically, right?
Pretty much, for the most part. That's when you want the aerosol can, a windshield de-icer, and roll your window down and reach around there and hose it down.
Okay.
You usually end up at that point with a hot windshield, but then it's so hot in the cab you can't stand it, so you're driving with the windows down, so then you're getting moisture in there and creating twice the problem, and it's just a nuisance.
Yes, it is. Now, there's also, of course, the old reach around and slap the windshield wiper trick. You can reach outside, wait till the wiper gets to the top of the thing, then smack it. Of course, that's way less safe than actually pulling over the road and smacking your windshield. But your wipers. But I don't think most guys do that. You see guys reaching out the window and smacking it as they're going down the road.
Oh, I would never do that going down the road.
Though the thing is, it's like, I always make sure that nobody's beside me. I don't have people around me when I'm doing that, because you never know what's going to happen. I'm pretty good at it. I don't ever, stray from my lane or do anything weird like that. But just in case, I just always make sure there's no one near me when I'm doing that. And I really don't want people seeing me doing that too. Some car might get a little freaked out if they look over and see you reaching out the windshield.
Up here, it's easy. It's always dark.
Good point. Yeah, and there's nobody around.
Do you know anything about heated windshield wiper blades? Is that a thing down there at all? Or
it is, but from what I have heard, none of them work worth a crap. I have never tried any.
Okay, because when I bought my first new truck back in 1994 and headed for Alaska, that's one thing I had the dealer put on it. I heard of these heated wiper blades, and they put heated wiper blades on it.
Uh-huh.
And for a month or two, they were really good, but then I found the heat destroyed the rubber, and then they wouldn't even wipe warm rain off the windows. So after a couple months, they were junk.
And then that's the thing you have to buy a whole new unit then?
Yeah, like I say, that was in 1994, and I threw them away and put some regular ones on, and have never tried it again. So I didn't know if it was a thing now or not.
Huh. Yeah, it's still a thing. I see it online, but I've just never heard that they worked worth a crap. And especially if they're just going to go bad after one season, what's the point?
No. Okay.
Yeah. Now a listener of mine sent in a couple of listeners sent in a tip. David sent in a tip that you should, instead of reaching your hand out the window, if you got like a little stick or maybe use your tire thumper or something like that, you could reach out and kind of flip your windshield with that thing. And Greg mentioned this thing called Slush Buster, which is actually kind of like a little strip of rubber that sets just above your, okay, how do I say this? Horizontal on your windshield, just above your wipers where they normally sit. So each time it goes across that little hump, it will knock the ice off. Have you ever heard of these?
Reading that note, it seems to me like I looked at them online and then read some reviews and
mixed.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I remember looking, and that's as far as it went.
Yeah. I actually contacted the company and asked them to send me a review unit that I was going to try it, but they never even responded to me. And I just hate that, So I didn't get a chance to try them. But if anybody has, please write in and let me know about it. Tell me what your experiences are with them at truckerdump@gmail.com. It's called the Slush Buster. Check that out. But okay, it sounds like to me though that I'm not even going to have to worry about any of this stuff forming if I just get some of that de-icer crap. Because as soon as the wiper hits that, it's going to de-ice it, right?
Yeah, you can de-ice stuff down pretty good with that aerosol windshield de-icer. It's just basically methanol in a can.
Can you tell me why I'm stupid enough that I've been pissing with this all these years and have not thought of that?
Not on the air.
Okay, we'll leave it at that then. All right. Okay, what else do we have here?
In the heater control, we had to turn the defroster off when you're parked.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
That does two things. The minor thing is it actually keeps your windshield clear with no heat on it. If a snowstorm comes through, you're not going to end up with a big frozen, watery mess. Snow will actually wipe off of things pretty easy. But the big thing is when you have it in the defrost setting, the air conditioner is running.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense, but the reason it's running is an air conditioning unit will dry the air.
Okay.
And it's pulling that moist air in through that air conditioning condenser and making it dry before it goes into the heater, and dry air defrosts better. But if you have it on when you're parked, the air conditioner will get hot and it turns the fan on. Well, your engine fan will be running regularly. If you're sitting there at a high idle, the engine temperature will be, 190, but the fan will be kicking on and off and on and off and on and off. And the guy sitting next to you is looking at you like, what is wrong with your truck?
Oh, okay.
Well, it's because the air conditioner is on, and so it's calling for the engine fan to kick on to cool it, and it'll actually cool your motor off. You've been having idle issues where your truck's not staying warm.
Yeah.
We'll turn the defroster on, and it will double your problem because the fan will be on half the time.
Okay.
So
I
whenever
don't
you park,
I don't make a habit out of keeping the defroster on, but I will make sure I check that next time that it does that. It's been, of course, I think it was in the 25 or 30 degrees last night, and it was idling just fine. And it shouldn't be idling because my truck isn't supposed to idle until it's below 20.
That wasn't crowbar weather?
Huh?
That wasn't crowbar weather?
Crowbar weather? Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, my truck has not been idling, and it won't stay warm enough in here, so I have figured out that my crowbar is just the right length that I can stick it between my accelerator and my seat and just wedge it in there just right, and I can get it to idle about 1100 RPMs.
Yeah.
Works nice.
But yeah, I turn mine over to vent and floor and just put it on medium, and when I get up in the morning and climb out of the sleeper, it's nice and toasty in the cab.
Yeah, I have never had that issue where, I mean, even if it snows overnight, like you said, it just the heat inside the truck is enough to keep the windshield from getting bad. That's my experience. Yeah, and you just run your wipers once and you're done. Ready to roll. All right, did we cover all that? Oh, by the way, I am writing basically Kevin wrote a lot of this up to kind of explain it to me before we got into this, and I'm going to put that all into a PDF and just have that free for download, because I know there's going to be some time when I'm thinking, okay, cold, do I run it hot? How do I do that? I don't remember. And so I'm going to just print out this little PDF. So if you want that, go to abouttruckdriving.com and it'll be in the free stuff section. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this. Okay, what else do we have? Let's see, road repairs. We've discussed the big hammer, right? BFH.
Yep, bigger the better.
I think we discussed all that stuff already, haven't we? Ways to unfreeze the brake lines. Will that methanol in the brake line work after the fact?
Yeah, as long as you can get a little bit of flow. We thaw out a lot of valves and stuff by dumping some air brake antifreeze is what it's called, I think, on the can. But yeah, you dump that in there and it'll help thaw it out. And a lot of guys, have you seen it's called Heat, H-E-E-T, in a yellow bottle that's actually gasoline antifreeze? A lot of guys swear by that stuff. It's a handy little bottle that's easy to pour into the glad hand. And a lot of guys seem to think that stuff is hotter than the air brake antifreeze as far as thawing something out that's already frozen. But I've never, really noticed the difference other than the bottle's handier. But yeah, you can get valves thawed out with it as long as you can get a little bit of flow, as long as there's not a line that's completely blocked where you can't even get any air to move. Then you're never going to.
Yeah, that's what I always wondered. If it's gummed up, is it even doing any good, or is it just hitting a dam in there, 3 feet in and it's done, Do you run it in there as preventative?
Yes. If you're, in a warmer climate in a rainstorm and you're hooking onto a trailer and you're heading to a warm climate, before you even hook up, dump, I'd say less than a quarter of a cup, just pour a little bit of air brake antifreeze into your red glad hand and then hook it to the trailer and get that methanol circulating through that trailer. And then when you get to a cold climate, you will have half the trouble.
Now, do those cans have a spray nozzle on them, or are they just like a pour thing?
No, they're like a plastic bottle of oil, just like motor oil sort of container that says air brake antifreeze on it.
Okay. So can you just dump it into your tractor side glad hand and then just hook it up?
Just hold the hose up in the air and pour it in there. It helps if you've got a little miniature funnel.
Okay.
Or one of those yellow bottles are handy, but just anything to pour it in there, and just pour a little bit in there before you hook up. And then when you charge that trailer, do it before you've ever put air in the trailer. And that way it will
shove it all back.
Charge the trailer and kind of spread it through it.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, one other thing I want to discuss about the brake lines is the alcohol. Do again, that's going to be bad on your rubber grommets and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, the air brake antifreeze, I believe, has, it's not just straight methanol. It's got other stuff in it to, lubricate the rubber, and you can read the bottle, and it says different stuff. But yeah, you don't want to overuse it, and if you really, really overuse it, it'll plug a valve. You can even, like hydrolock an air valve, where it's basically full of fluid and won't work at all. So,
well, that doesn't sound good.
Use it lightly. Don't overuse it. But It is a big help. Our tractors actually have. It's a little metal can that is full of it, and the air line from the air compressor, it goes to the air dryer, and then it goes through that, which puts methanol into the air, the whole air system, every time the air compressor is pumping. So it's always in there, but you just don't want to overdo it.
It sounds like, from what we've been talking about, that the best practice is just to use something that is specifically designed for, don't try to use vinegar or, vinegar and water to clean your windshield, or alcohol in your wiper fluid. Just, use the stuff that's made for cleaning, clearing your brakes, or the low temperature wiper fluid, that kind of stuff.
That would be the best.
Yeah, quit trying to rig everything. Truckers. Psst.
No home brew.
Okay. Hey, one other thing we passed up here is that, and I was reminded when you said to do this, to put the stuff on the brake lines before you actually head into the bad weather and stuff. Well, it's kind of the same way with fuel, and we were talking about that, how that you should actually, that fuels are mixed differently in different areas, right? I mean, like they'll put in the north, they will put more anagel crap, mix it into the actual fuel than they will like in the south, right?
Yes.
So that should determine where you're going to fuel more often. So like if you're heading north, you might not want to fuel in the south. If you can avoid it, you might want to wait until you get to the north. Whereas, does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe they really put much anti-gel per se that you would get out of the pump. It's more of a blend. You've got number one diesel that, it doesn't freeze 60 below.
Okay.
And then on the other spectrum, you've got number two diesel that'll start gelling up at, 15 or 20 degrees.
Yeah.
And up here, they blend them, and you'll get like a 20 below fuel that's like 80% or 60% number one and 40% number two, or something like that. They make blends that will stand to different temperatures. In the fall, you'll see some plus 10 fuel, and then like right now, we're running straight number one, and it never does freeze until it gets real extreme. So it's more of a blend. But your problem is finding out what you're getting. The guy at the counter at the fuel stop, well, what kind of fuel do you have? Oh, we have diesel. So finding out would be the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that's more of a deal up there than it is down here, because I honestly cannot remember the last time I have seen number one fuel. I'm sure they have it, in Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, some of those type places, but I have not seen it in ages. So, okay. Well, anyway, key is, if you're going to be heading into cold weather, try to not fill up in Florida.
That would be a good suggestion.
Yeah.
We see it a lot up here, mainly on reefers for some reason, that come up from the lower 48. My youngest son works at a equipment repair facility, and they deal a lot with reefers that are frozen up that have came up from the lower 48. The reefer doesn't really circulate much fuel, so that fuel in the tank can gel really easily, and they'll fuel up in Seattle, and about the time they hit the Alaska border, their reefer dies because the fuel's frozen.
Well, the good thing is it's cold in Alaska, right? So it's like the stuff isn't going to go bad.
Well, except when you've got bananas in there.
Okay.
They go bad when they freeze.
Yeah, good point. This all just goes to my thought of, I don't know why anybody would drive reefers, but hey, there you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they see it a lot with equipment that comes up on barges and stuff like that too. They'll, come up on the boat and they've been fueled down south and then they're just froze solid. And so it just, if you can find out what you're getting, and if you don't know and you're heading into below zero weather, pour in some anti-gel.
Okie doke. Hey, I discovered one more thing we were missing, and I'm so glad I looked back and saw it because I thought this was really cool. Okay. I put in here that you should always make sure that your tires are rolling when you take off, because if you're on any kind of slick pavement, even an empty trailer on wet pavement in the right conditions, you can drag it for a little bit and not even realize you're dragging tires that aren't spinning. So my suggestion was to always look out both, turn a little bit, turn to the right and, look in your mirror and look back there at those trailer tires and make sure they're turning, and then turn back to the left and look in that mirror and make sure those tires are turning. But, you added something that I thought was even cooler, and that it's the snowball trick.
Well, yeah, when you've only got 4 of them to look at back there.
Yeah.
Usually you can see it all. And
even at night, you can't see them all the time.
Yeah, it's a black tire, and it's hard to see, mainly in the dark.
Right.
And we even run load lights, but there's times when you just cannot tell. It's like, well, I think that's turning. Well, you don't want to just put it in the wind, and 20 miles down the road, you hear a big bang when you got a double barrel flat because you drug them out.
Right.
If you just can't figure it out, set something on top of the tire. Go back there and just set a snowball on top of it or whatever you got and pull ahead a foot and go back there and see if it fell off on the ground or if it's still sitting there on top of the tire.
Yeah, because likely if it's, slick conditions like that, you're going to have some snow around. If you're not going to have that, you could toss, I don't know, you could put a glove up on top of it or something like that even.
Yeah, and another trick is if you've been parked all night and it's freezing conditions, a lot of times the frost on the ground creates a different color on the tire depending on the temperature and what you're parked on. But when you get up, before you get out to do your pre-trip, if you release the brakes and back up a foot,
okay,
then set your brakes and get out. And as you're walking around, you can look at those tires and see the ones that have rolled. That frost from the bottom of it will be up on the front.
Oh, okay.
And if you see one that the frost has not moved up, then you know it's locked up.
Great tip. Never even thought of that. But yeah, I've seen that before where, you notice like a different colored spot where it's been right on the bottom where the tire's actually contact on the ground.
Yeah, and it depends on the humidity and what you're parked on, and sometimes it doesn't look any different, but most of the time, if you're in conditions where you may have a frozen brake, the surface that you've been parked, surface of that tire where you've been parked, is going to be a different color.
Okay, cool. I think we've covered everything that we had listed on our list for driving stuff. Is there anything else you can think of that we might have left off?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, then we have just one last section, and this is what all truckers dread doing, but sounds like you mentioned, Slack, you do this about 20 times a season? Chaining.
Well, probably an average. It just depends on the year. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But
yeah,
when I first started driving in the late 80s, early 90s, I was hauling logs in the mountains of Oregon. So there was times I was chaining up 4 times a day every trip. So
wow,
I got in the practice of chaining up. So to me, it's not that big a deal. If I'm questionable whether I'm going to get up a hill or not, I just throw a set of chains on. It takes less than 5 minutes. And about 3 minutes to take them off, and that's a lot better than trying to do it on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing. If you get good at it, you can do it that fast. But if you can't, the first time you're doing it, it takes forever because you've never done it before.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some crazy stuff.
I actually had one company that actually had like a tire mounted on this mount, and then they would show you how to do, they'd put the chain on there, but they're doing it 4 feet up off the ground. It's totally different when you're laying in the snow and it's on the tire is actually setting on the ground, and you're trying to figure out how to get that thing wrapped around and how to get it tight and everything. And one of my suggestions was just, if you have chains, even if you never plan on using them, put those darn things on in dry weather. Just
one of them. You don't have to chain up the whole truck. Just one chain. Figure out what you're doing.
Yeah. Because once you figure that out and you kind of figure out some of the tricks that, it makes it so much easier. I got to where I could do them pretty fast one year because I was hauling doubles. And each of these places that I would drop one double, one pup, and then I would go to the other place. And each one of these places, this particular customer always had these steep driveways, and they were horrible at getting out there and, salting them or anything. So I would have to chain up just to get the trailer out of the dock and then put the other one back in. And it was such a pain in the butt, but I got pretty good at it one year. But I make a habit now. I don't do it unless I have to. I don't even have chains on this truck right now. They don't even, because I don't run east of or west of the Rockies very much. So, but if you have chains on your truck, make sure you try them before it gets nasty. That way you're not going to be clueless, on the side of the road somewhere.
Well, even right down to if they're going to fit. I mean, I've tried chains on. I've been chaining for 30 years or whatever, and I'll try them on just to make sure they fit, because different tires, depending on tread depth and the tire manufacturer, and if it's a cap and the width, and different tires are different sizes and different chains. There's a lot of different sizes of chains, and if the guy at the parts counter grabbed the wrong one, or the tire's a little different, or you can get out there and the chains are too short, and then you're a real mess.
Yeah, that ain't good. Well, okay. Now, when you get these things on, you say not to get them too tight, right?
Depending on what you're driving on, if you get them too loose, they'll be slapping and tearing up the bottom of your trailer, and when they slap
we've
the
all
ground,
seen that.
They'll break. But if we don't run cam locks. My chains don't have cam locks on them. They just got a bar on the end of them to snap them down tight, and that's it. But if you take a set of cam lock chains that have got 4 or 5 cam locks around the outside, plus a bar on the end, and you cinch those chains down tight, and some guys will move a little bit and then cinch them down tighter and get them chains just fiddle string tight. It'll melt into the tires. It'll actually melt into the tread and ruin the tires.
Yeesh.
So you don't want them too tight. But a bigger problem is too loose. So there's like a happy medium.
Okay.
When you're rolling along and look at them in your mirror, they should be coming up off the tire an inch or something when they come around the top, and not loosely slapping, but you don't want them overly tight.
Okay, cool. And you say the bungees are worthless.
I've never figured out that deal unless you've got those bungees so tight that you're in fear of popping your eyeball out when it breaks. The centrifugal force, you've picked up chains, they're heavy. Yeah. And when that chain's spinning around at 40, 50 miles an hour, the centrifugal force of that chain is going to pull it out to the point of, what it's got for slack in the chain, and that bungee ain't going to do nothing.
Right.
It doesn't have enough strength to overcome the centrifugal force of a chain flying around a tire at 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's not going to hold it on if the chain were to break or something like that.
Nope, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've never used them, but I've seen lots of drivers do that.
Oh, they build bungees that look like a.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like
octopus,
spider.
That are that's made for that. And I maybe if you're doing under 20 miles an hour and have your chains really loose, it might hold it tight. But once you get to rolling, if you've got any kind of speed, the centrifugal force will just pull that bungee out, and it doesn't do anything.
Ugh. Okay. All right. As far as installation goes, you say do not toss. No, wait. Okay, you say don't drive. Don't try to lay them down flat and then drive on top of them. Why not?
Well, that's number one sign of a rookie is somebody that's laying their chains out on the ground.
I believe I tried that once.
and then they're trying to drive onto them. Well, then you're never square on them even, and then trying to drag that chain up over the tire. And if you've got fenders, it's even worse.
Yeah.
You drape the chains over the tire.
Okay.
And the end without the hooks, you want just barely touching the ground and kind of tuck it in under the tire. And then the end with the hook will be a little longer, and you just kind of have a little pile of chain there lined up. And then you ease onto them till you drive on them, and the hook is hanging about halfway down the back or front of the tire, depending on if you're pulling onto them or backing onto them. And that all depends on, fenders and mud flaps, and whatever's easiest to get to is where you want your hooks to end up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just ease onto them. Don't drive onto them and then try to drag them up over the tire. That take you 2 hours to chain up.
Okay, and I just thought we're going to try to find a decent video of somebody putting on tire chains and how to do it, and I'll try to put a link in the show notes if I remember how to do that, and maybe we can find one so people have a good idea how to do it.
I actually looked for that, and I found some real disasters. So
oh no,
we need to try and find a better one. Somebody said I needed to make one because I think it was on Facebook. It was basically they were posting a joke. It was a training video from some company.
Oh no.
And some Alaska driver had posted a link to it, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is hilarious.
Okay. Well, see, maybe you do need to put that video up.
Yeah, we'll try to find a good one.
Yeah. There's got to be something on there. Surely YouTube's a big place, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It was mentioned that sometimes you might want to just toss a spare chain under your tire to see if you can, just to get out of a bad spot, like a parking spot or a dock or something like that. What's your thought on that?
If you've got a junk chain, you can tear the heck out of a chain doing that. But if you've got an old chain that's no good anymore or something, rather than carrying cat litter or something like that, yeah, give it a shot. Throw it under there, and if you only need to get moving a foot because you're just stuck in a hole, it'll definitely help. You can throw it out under there and get rolling, and then go back and pick it up. But if it's your only set of good chains, I wouldn't do it, because it chews up under the drivers and spits out. You could tear up the hook and end up with no more chain. Okay.
Well, what's your thought on throwing other crap under there? Like if you see boards or rocks laying around, or pieces of broken cement or something.
Whatever it takes. Rocks work really good. Like get a shovel and go around on the shoulder of the road and scoop up a little bit of gravel and throw under there. That works great. Anything it takes to get moving.
Yeah, I've shoved boards under there before. I've seen I had some rubber mats that were in the back of my trailer, and I from like a paper load. And I just kind of threw them underneath there, and it was enough to tore those things to shreds. But, I got out of the hole without having to chain up.
Oh, yeah. Even if you want to sacrifice the floor mats out of the cab or your pillow, whatever. Sometimes you only need, just
your
2 inches. If you can just move 2 inches to get up out of the little holes you're in, you'll be going.
Your
coat,
pillow.
Whatever.
Can you imagine the feathers everywhere?
Feathers, that'd be good traction.
That'd be awesome. If you ever do that, we need video.
Okay.
All right.
I'll give it a shot. I have an old pillow that's no good anymore.
There you go. I really want to see that.
Yeah. Another thing we had in the chaining that I find that's very important, and I'm sure you have seen it, is don't have any more lights on than you need.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've rolled up on an accident scene where there's 4 cop cars and 2 ambulances, and every one of them's got bright lights flashing.
Yep.
And you can't see nothing.
Yep.
Well, when you're out chaining up, number one is you don't want to get run over. And if you've got a bunch of bright lights shining everywhere to where nobody can see you because they're blinded by the light, there's a lot bigger chance of getting run over.
Yeah.
I recommend, like a reflective vest and minimal lighting so that you can be seen.
Okay. And you suggested the headlamp too.
Well, I suggest it, but I'm usually in too big a hurry to put it on, so I've got a little pen light that I carry in my pocket, and I've usually got it in between my teeth. And then whenever you bump the tire, it about breaks your teeth out. So
Yeah.
that's what I do, but I would suggest a headlamp works very good for chaining because you can see around the backside of the tire when you're latching them and stuff like that. Them little LED headlamps work great.
I think a headlamp is so great in so many situations. I mean, I've used it to take the freaking cat litter out at night, you know, in the dark and go throw it in the woods, you know, and it's just, that thing is so practical, yet I have never had one in here, and I don't know why that is. I do have a flashlight that has like one of those little clamps on it, so you can, you know, kind of clamp it anywhere, and you can actually put it in a certain position and it'll stand up, and then the actual head of it rotates around. So it's kind of handy, but there's been so many situations where you could just, you know, crawling under a truck, for Pete's sake, you know. Headlamp would be great, but yet that's another thing I don't have in here.
They're very handy. Like I say, I have one, but usually too lazy to put it on.
Yeah. Rather chip your teeth, huh?
Yeah. Works out well.
Well, you can't do that with a mag light. Not unless you got a really big mouth.
Yeah.
Unless you're Stephen Perry, you know, or Mick Jagger.
Little rechargeable LED stream light works well.
Oh, I didn't mean Steven Tyler. I meant Steven. Did I say Steve Perry or Steve Tyler?
I don't know.
Nobody listens to what I say anyway. I meant Steven Tyler. He's the one with the huge mouth.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, is there anything else that we're missing here?
Probably, but neither one of us know what it is.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the listeners will tell us what we missed, and I would really love to hear from any of you out there who are experienced drivers who have listened to this and thought we're either nuts and we're stupid. Tell us what your opinions are. Truckerdump@gmail.com, or send in an audio comment. That would be cool too if you got some little winter tip that we missed. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming on the show. We got chock full of juicy information.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, hey, did you, I wanted one last thing. You mentioned something about, Ice Road Truckers is this huge show everybody loves, thinks that these drivers are awesome. Can you tell me tell everybody what you told me about that road that they travel?
It's a dirt and gravel road. It's not ice. Well, where they're at now, I believe they're in Canada somewhere where they build ice roads. But the haul road, when they filmed in Alaska, the haul road is a gravel, dirt, rock, chip seal disaster of a road. And in the wintertime, to maintain it, they water it to fill the potholes and washboards.
Okay.
They'll water it and blade it and create, ice to fill it and make it smooth.
Yeah, because you can travel much faster across ice than you could across all those potholes.
Exactly, but it's not an ice road per se. There's bridges and culverts, and you're never driving over any body of water on the haul road.
Yeah, I just thought
all hard surface.
Yeah, I've watched maybe 2 or 3 of those episodes, and after you've seen one, I really don't think you need to see any more. But that goes with all reality TV for me. I've never been a fan of it. I don't see there's much reality in any of it. There's always, they're put in, these situations that probably aren't going to come up on a regular basis, and they call it reality, and it just drives me freaking crazy.
Yeah, I think it was like 10 years ago they were up here, and I think that show's still going.
I think it is too, but I couldn't tell you. I never tune into it. Yeah. What do you think about the show in general?
The Ice Road Trucker show?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just a joke. I watched some of the Alaska episodes when they were filming up here, and they were a real nuisance on the road, and film crews are just in the way.
Oh, so you actually had to deal with them when they're filming
all
stuff.
Winter long.
Yeah,
we had to dodge them all winter long. There was terrible wrecks with them, and one of the film crews got hauled out in a helicopter because they rear-ended a tanker in a blow, and
wow.
It was just a bad situation. And then I watched a few of the episodes, and it was nothing reality about it. It was complete fake drama. So
yeah,
it's not real.
Well, gee, imagine that, a reality show that isn't real.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I will let you go, Kevin. I appreciate your time, and hope the listeners got a bunch of cool crap out of this.
Hope so.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Later.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that interview. We certainly had a good time doing it. Actually, we had such a good time doing it that we went and talked an extra hour or so. There'll be a few little outtake clips at the end of this podcast if you're still here and sticking, or if you're going to stick around for that. Some funny stuff that was said and some funny situations. Anyway, just some extras for you. This interview was just a prime example of what I've said over the years, that I'm not an expert in the trucking industry. I'm far from it. I don't claim to be an expert. I just am a guy who's been doing it a while, have some opinions about some things, have some thoughts about the way things should work. And, like I said, this interview, I think, just epitomizes that how little I know about the trucking industry. I can tell Kevin is so much more knowledgeable about mechanical stuff and, DEF fluid and how the truck works and all this stuff like that I've never really cared enough about to, I care about it. I want to know this stuff. I'm just too lazy to go look it up myself. It's just not a high priority for me. So it's nice that, I think this is going to be good, me having this software now. And, I've always said I would like to get into interviews, and I would like to do more of these, get some people that have some other knowledge that I don't have and pick their brains a little bit. And I think it'll be kind of nice that since I'm not an expert and I don't know everything about the industry, that I'll have some questions for the people that, and drive the conversation in an area where I think that maybe some new truckers, might be asking some of the same questions as I'm asking them. Man, I hope that makes sense. I felt like I stumbled through that. But anyway, if you have questions or you have your own thing you want to mention about winter driving tips that we left out, like we said, we're sure we left something out. So just send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com. And I guess that will do it. But like I said, we're not going to have any feedback today because I rambled on way too long in the intro, like I knew I would. I actually told Kevin, I'm not really going to do much of an intro because this podcast is long, but I just couldn't resist, with Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that stuff going on. So anyway, hope you are fine with the long podcast. Until next time, enjoy the outtakes and, well, crank up the jams. So, what'd you think of the interview? Want to hear more of these? What Kevin and I miss? Leave your tips in the comments section of the blog post by going to abouttruckdriving.com and searching for TD119. You'll also find all the show note links at the bottom of the blog post. You can also shoot me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com or shout out on Twitter when I'm at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. Or you can join the shiny new Trucker Dump Slack group by downloading the app and requesting an invite at truckerdump@gmail.com. If you haven't left a review of the podcast or the book yet, please put that in your to-do list. Better yet, please tell a friend or two about both. As always, I appreciate you listening. So until next time, drive safe, stay out of my way.
Oh, so you're still recording now then?
Yeah. I mean, I could stop it and I can continue to talk to you, but I just thought I'd leave it in here. I just left it running I don't know why.
Oh. But that's that program that you just bought.
Yeah, with your money. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. Like I said, it's only 25 cents an episode.
I know. I told my wife, I sent her that text that you sent me of that, and she wrote back, that she was LOLing, She was like, "This guy's a smart ass," and I said, "That's why I want to have him on the show," But not only do I think you'll have a lot of useful information, but I'm sure it'll be funny.
Is that the one where I only overpaid by 20 cents?
Yes. Yeah. I told Buck that too, and he got a kick out of it.
That's just me.
Okay. Well, I will, I don't know when I'm going to have a chance to piece this thing together, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of editing on it. Just a few spots.
We know you run a pretty tight schedule, so I know you'll get right on it.
Uh-huh.
You notice I tried to keep my smart ass out of it?
I wish you hadn't. That would have been great. We can redo it if you wanted to get. I should have told you just to be as free as you want and just mess with me all you want. That would have probably been more fun.
Well, I know you can take it, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, is this you in this picture?
Where's that?
Your picture on Skype is this boat that's in the air.
Yeah, that's me.
How'd you get that thing in the air?
Beaver Dam.
You jumped a dam?
Lots of them. I actually made a...
Oh, is that a dam underneath it?
Yeah, that's a beaver dam. I made a video going up a creek.
Those poor beavers.
Oh, no, they're fine.
They must have been freaking out.
Nah, they're way on up the creek in their house. It's just the dam they put in the creek to make a pond.
Oh, okay.
They didn't even know we were there. There were no beavers harmed in the making of this video.
Edit that. Hang on. Man, I had snot dripping out of my nose there.
I don't know. I don't even remember where I bought it, but I never read it. I just listened to it. I just bought it for the audio. I don't read.
Yeah, I had a feeling that would be the case. That's why I went to the painstaking pain in the ass of doing the audiobook. I mean, I bet I spent 6 months every time I was home, sitting in my closet at home, reading that book. My wife's,
that's kind of funny.
come on with the coming out of the closet jokes. Come on.
Bring it on, huh?
It's that way with everything, though. When I wrote my book, I gave it to all my family members. I gave it to a couple of friends. The only thing I got back was, well, I got through part of it. You know, it looks good to me. You know, I think my wife was the only one who read the whole thing all the way through. And I was like, how was it? And she goes, yeah, it was funny. It was good. It's like, gee, thanks for the input, you know? I mean, am I that great of a writer that there could be nothing improved in this book, you know? Come on.
Oh, well.
Come on.
I'll try to listen closer and give you some input then. I figured you were just buried in feedback and who'd want to hear from me?
No. The only reason I'm always behind on feedback is because I only put out one podcast per month, you know?
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I must be missing some of them. I better
ass.
go back and push that find missing episodes button or something here. I didn't realize that.
I skipped December altogether.
I know you did.
Yeah. I remember thinking on that, a phrase, trying to come up with a phrase like that would help people, and then now I don't even remember it. So isn't that funny? Hope nobody asked.
Remember, the tandems are light, slide it to the right, I think is what you came up with.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Aren't I brilliant, man?
Oh, man, you are. Yep.
Whatever. Yep. That's what my wife would say.
Yeah.
I've always said if I could make $75,000 a year and be home every day, I'd be happy. But
oh, absolutely.
I can't. You know, I can make 70 and be on the road for 3 weeks at a time. Not quite the same.
No, that's different.
that's
These two things are different.
One of these things is not like the other.
There you go.
Oh.